Emma.
Yes, Madelyn.
What's Kirby's best advice for living through a stressful time?
I don't know. What would Kirby say to me?
Deep breaths. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your Kirby would also say eat the rich host Madelyn.
I'm your stockpiling sticks host Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. I thought that was just a world response for a moment, but I understand that it's a reference to the new game. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, would.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This week, we're talking about Kirby's Dream Land and V Rising. Both games about eating things.
Yeah.
So,
do you eat very much in V Rising, actually? It didn't seem like you do, actually.
Drink, perhaps, sure.
But even drinking, it does not seem like blood sucking is like a big part of the gameplay. Actually,
no, you definitely have to drink people's blood.
Okay.
Not to the same extent as Kirby has to eat all of his foes. But blood drinking is definitely part of it.
He just sort of transfigures them inside his stomach and then vomits them out again.
Neat. The circle of life.
That's how life works, yeah.
We enjoying the podcast so far, folks?
He's feeding his baby birds, except it's violent.
It's pretty violent the way baby birds get fed, too, if we're going to be honest.
Yes.
Let's talk more about that. No, we gotta talk about Kirby's Dream Land. It's a 1992 platformer from HAL Laboratory, published by Nintendo for Game Boy.
Yeah, I feel like I knew, but I had forgotten that it was Sakurai's game series before they stuck him on Smash.
Before he got shackled to Smash. Do you think that's what he's working on? You can't make another one, right? There's no way to make another Smash.
I hope that whatever he's working on is something that he enjoys.
I hope it's a Katamari game.
I don't think it's a Katamari game,
I think he'd be really good at that, and I think that would be great.
Anyway, Masahiro, right? Masahiro Sakurai. Yep. In the credits, I think it's just Masa Sakurai in Kirby's Dream Land on the GBA.
Well, sure, because he was about 12 years old.
He was 19 years old when he came up with it, which, what am I doing with my life?
I know, what were you doing at age 19? That said, if you've watched, man, everyone should go watch Sakurai's, closing video for his YouTube channel and, how he did the YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. Because I saw myself perfected, you know?
I watched his number 100 video, which was development sequence of the original Kirby.
Wow.
Which, he talked about their dev tool for the Kirby on GBA was if I understood it correctly, it was
this is insane. Yes.
Two Famicoms with a trackpad.
Yeah, he did all of the coding with a mouse.
Not even a mouse, it's a ball that you roll around with your hands. And he did all the pixel art and moving characters around and stuff for this, which I just don't understand how that works, but neat.
He was just I assumed that's how it was done.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was he talked about how enemies in Kirby don't have terrain collision. So he would literally set their movements, right? And then make the backgrounds match the movements of crazy. Going downstairs or falling off ledges or whatever, which extremely wild. And yeah, in that comment he was it was kind of tedious, but I kind of just figured this is how everyone was doing it, and I had fun.
It's this man, did he talk to anyone while he was making this game? He's hey buddy, is this how we're doing it? I feel if at any point he had said to anyone else, is this how it's done? They'd have been of course not, you absolute moron.
He did do a lot of the initial work by himself. It sounded like there were a couple other artists and stuff as well. But like the drawings, the level design, he was just doing it. He was just having fun on his trackpad.
Been there. Kirby, if you're not familiar, are you not familiar with Kirby? How are you listening to this podcast? But the iconic round pink boy.
Yeah.
Pink question mark. We'll get back to that.
Pink, yes, but they didn't know at the time.
Yes. To be revealed as the iconic pink boy.
Yes.
Who likes to eat people.
You know, he likes to hold people, like, in his mouth. I feel like is the more accurate way to
This is a good question. Yeah. What happens to someone when they are inhaled by Kirby, right?
Well, in Dreamland, when you inhale things, you can then spit them back out as stars that can attack other enemies. After Dreamland, in subsequent games, I think in the second game, which was like Kirby's Adventure or something, they introduced copy abilities where Kirby swallows things and then is able to sort of take on their abilities.
Sure. Do some DNA synthesis.
Yes, but that was not part of his initial move set in Kirby's Dreamland, but has since become like a core part of Kirby.
Yes. Kirby's Dreamland, the only Kirby where like the defining Kirby thing does not happen. Anyway, if you were curious about the story of Kirby's Dreamland, it's pretty straightforward. This game also very short.
Yes,
right?
It's like, about 20 minutes.
I didn't even realize it was that short. I was like, 5 levels, that's probably an hour. But no. That's crazy.
I mean, if you play it all the way through, which, like, it's supposed to be very much like a beginner's game.
Right.
So one run through is about 20 minutes.
That's so crazy that's, like, imagine launching, like, one of the most iconic characters of all time now with a 20-minute game.
When people post that Sonic
people
meme...
purchase, you know? Like, that's insane.
Yeah, when people post that Sonic meme, what they really want is to return to Kirby's Dreamland, honestly.
Don't we all?
I kind of do.
Don't we all wish that we could live on, not named this yet at the time of this game, but Planet Popstar in Dreamland with Kirby?
Yeah.
I guess, except there was a famine. So that's the story of this game, is the Dreamlanders living happy, healthy, well-fed Dreamland lives when the evil King Dedede came down. Dedede?
Isn't it Dedede?
I would like for it to be DDD, but it is
But
Dedede.
it's with E's, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. But I like DDD better. King Dedede. That feels good. Kirby originally was going to be named Popopo. So I think those would have matched a little bit better at the time.
Extremely funny story behind the Kirby name, but continue.
Yes, lots of funny stories to come. Don't worry, folks. But Evil King came down and was like, I want the stars. I want the food. They're mine. And then everyone was sad. And then as Wikipedia describes him, I really like this. A spry little boy named Kirby.
I don't know if that's accurate.
What about it do you think is not accurate?
Well, maybe it's accurate, but it doesn't feel true, you know? If you told me, like, a spry little boy named Kirby, in no universe would I picture what Kirby looks like.
That's why I was confused by it. I was like, that's a weird way of describing this, like, marshmallow. Like, that's Astro Boy, you know?
Yeah. Like, is he spry? Yeah, I guess so. Is he little? I think so.
Yeah.
Is he a boy? I guess. Like, all correct ways, but it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, but I thought it was, I was like, that's a really weird way to describe this character that we all know as, like, this very round pink thing. As a spry little boy.
Yeah.
But somebody on Wikipedia had a fun time with that. Anyway, spry little boy Kirby was like, I can help. And then in about 20 minutes, I guess, beats his levels and returns food and prosperity to his people.
He specifically grows huge like a balloon and picks up the entire castle of King Dedede and carries it across the land, dropping food at the end.
Don't we all wish for that?
Yeah.
That is probably going to come up when we talk about the mashup later. Just a full castle being carried.
Yeah.
also something that these games have in common.
Meta Knight, also iconic Kirby character, not introduced until the second Kirby game.
The first Kirby game, though, huge hit, though.
Yeah. I think Sakurai said in his video, it sold 5 million copies by now. So yeah, people loved it. People loved little Kirby guy.
Yeah. Obviously, the consensus is that better Kirby games have since been released, but everyone was like, I love this guy. In fact, even the devs were like, I love this guy. All of the stories about game development 30 years ago are so silly, you know?
Uh-huh.
They're like, oh, well, we're making this game, and we'll figure out what the lead character looks like later. Right?
Yeah.
So we're just...
Well, yeah, you that happens with a lot of games.
No,
right?
I know that. That's not the part that's weird. The part that's weird is it's like the triangle strategy all over again, by which I mean it's like triangle strategy, but 30 years previously, in that they were just like, oh, actually, we like this spry little boy.
Yeah.
We're going to keep him.
What is the triangle strategy part of this?
I don't think triangle strategy was supposed to be the name, and then everyone was like, that's kind of cool, and they kept it.
Oh, they did call it Project Triangle Strategy at first, but it is very on brand with what that team has called all their games, so...
Okay, fair enough. Never mind.
They always announce it as Project something, and then somehow it is always the same thing.
It's a funny way of like pretending
release.
to keep the title under wraps, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's called Project blah blah blah. Project Kirby's Dream Land.
Yeah. But yeah, he did just design Kirby as a placeholder, and then everybody liked him, so stayed like that.
Yeah.
As for the name Kirby in this case, he was named after John Kirby.
Was he really named after this guy? The Japanese team was not aware this was happening.
Well, at least from the Kotaku article on the accidental origins of Kirby, the game was originally called Twinkle Popo, with Kirby named Popo Popo.
Even before that, it was Popopo. Sorry, I need to say the right. Popopo of the Spring Breeze, and then it was Twinkle Popo.
But they wanted a name that would appeal more to a Western audience, which included suggestions such as Gasper.
That's honestly pretty good.
That's after, like, Casper the Friendly Ghost, in case
and, like,
you're
a
wondering.
gasp.
And, like, a gasp, I guess. But they're saying on Kotaku that they were named after John Kirby, who was the lawyer that represented Nintendo when it was sued by Universal, because they were alleging that Donkey Kong was copyright infringement on King Kong. And he protected them from that.
Okay, I've seen that it's named after a Nintendo lawyer as well, so I'm not disputing that, but I've also seen the like stuff with like Sakurai and, you know, pick any Nintendo bigwig name, Miyamoto, whatever, being like, we were just kind of looking for a name that felt like an American pop icon, and we found out later that they named it after a lawyer, and like, we didn't really know.
I mean, I would assume it was more their marketing department at that point.
Yeah. Well, also, you know, I mean, originally HAL Laboratory was going to publish this themselves, and it was going badly. They were like, oh, companies have only the game stores have only ordered 20,000 of these. This seems bad. Mm-hmm. And, like, fortunately, someone at Nintendo was like, we think this game is good and we want to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby could have been a lost indie.
Wow. What a different world that would be.
And, like, where would Sakurai be?
Having fun on his 2 Famicoms still.
Honestly, he would... I'll say this. I do believe that Sakurai would probably have made a success. Like, his life path probably goes about the same, no matter what. Like, this man is unfortunately, like, too driven, is frighteningly driven, and I feel like if Kirby hadn't worked, would have invented some kind of other incredibly iconic character, and still ended up handcuffed to Super Smash for his entire life.
Another fun fact from his grab bag video on the original Kirby, the way that damage works in Kirby is you like knock to the edge of the screen, and then when you settle, the screen goes backwards to center around you again. The more damage you take, the more likely you can get fully knocked off the screen. What does this sound like to you? Is what he said. Does it sound like Smash Bros? Because it is.
Yeah.
Which he says he forgot that he made Kirby work like this when he was working on Smash Bros. And then just came up with this idea again, apparently. So.
That's exactly what I mean. That is my point. That, like, this man did not need any particular game to be successful. He would eventually have reinvented the wheel.
Yeah.
This game also features the most Madelyn core of things, which is a boss rush at the end. Which is really funny to get a boss rush after 15 minutes of game, but you know.
Yeah.
I saw it, I was like, heck yeah, Sakurai gets it. He knows what's up.
You also, upon beating the game, it will give you a button code combination that you can use in the main menu that will unlock hard mode as well.
And then if you beat that, you unlock, like, custom hard mode.
Oh, the days of entering little codes on your controller.
Now, it was really the, forerunner to two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
Just think, little codes used to be fun.
Yeah.
Remember when little codes were a fun thing? And
they were fun, yeah.
Not a not fun thing? Not a I'm so annoyed, I promise I'm who I say I am thing?
Anyway, Kirby is pink, which Sakurai apparently always envisioned him as.
Yeah.
It was pink. Mr. Miyamoto, because the Game Boy is in black and white, right? It's not on the Game Boy Color, it's just the normal Game Boy, so fully black and white game. So Mr. Miyamoto here, right?
What absolutely devastating, groundbreaking thing is he gonna say?
Mr. Miyamoto here, I thought Kirby was yellow.
Yeah, he really did. He's like, characters that look like this are yellow.
And when the game was sent over to the West to make cover art for it, Nintendo Japan did not send over details in time for the box art, so on the original GBA release of Kirby, he is white. Against a colored background.
And kind of spooky looking.
Yeah, like he does, if you don't know that he's supposed to be pink and cute, he does kind of look like a ghost, right?
Yeah.
But he's pink and cute.
And yellow Kirby does carry forward as the color of Kirby if you are doing like any of the multiplayer games.
Yeah.
But white Kirby does not ever appear again, I don't think.
So honestly, it's not very appealing.
Dang.
White Kirby.
Thanks, Nintendo of America.
I just don't, it doesn't, he's so simple looking to begin with that I feel like if you just like eliminated color from him, it makes him hard to, like, stand out. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, although it's still kind of harsh. I think it's really bold that Sakurai was like, I always knew he was pink. Do you think that's real, or do you think at some point Miyamoto said, I think he's yellow, and Sakurai, like, saw an opportunity to kind of, like, get one over? And he's like, what are you talking about?
No, I think,
like, he's always
well,
pink.
He was making the game the whole time. I think that he knew what color it would be. I just think he didn't communicate that, right? I don't think he, like, sent it over and was like, by the way, here's the game. By the way, Kirby's pink. I think he just sent the game over.
That's fair.
Didn't mention it.
This one's been re-released a few times. I think it's on Switch Online.
Probably.
I don't know, like, at what accessibility that is, but...
There's only, there's Switch Online, and then there's Switch Online Plus Expansion Pass, which you don't get any games just for Switch Online.
So maybe it's on Switch Online Plus Expansion Pass.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's only Switch Online Plus Expansion Pass gives you the access to the old game catalog.
So you can play Kirby's Dream Land there on your, like, lunch break.
While listening to Nintendo music on your phone.
Spoiler free.
I don't actually know if the Kirby OST is on Nintendo Music. Apparently they don't have very much stuff on there currently.
Hopefully more to come. Kirby has not gone through any major release droughts. I mean, it is not like an annual series anymore, but in looking at it, it was like, oh, okay, like there's a Kirby game. And also, like, he's the star of Super
I think
Smash.
the Forgotten Land was last year?
2022.
Oh, God.
But I think autumn.
Okay.
That's still, I was going to say, that's more like a year ago. No, it's
that's
November.
still 2 years ago. Yes, but it was relatively recently. There has been Kirby games on the Switch. Kirby, also a very versatile character. There's also been, like, you know, Kirby's Yarn, for example, where he's just made out of yarn.
Right.
So you can really do whatever you want with Kirby.
He's very malleable.
Yeah.
That said, would be a frightening... Imagine encountering Kirby.
Well, he's like a god, right?
Like.
He's like a god, yeah.
Like.
Cut
out the like.
I didn't get too much into it for the purposes of this podcast, since we're mostly talking about the first game, but apparently Kirby lore is, like, pretty intense.
I believe it.
Although, I do wonder how much of it is, like, canon versus made up. I did find it, inspiring to me that, again, in this talk from Sakurai, he was saying, like, why do all these things happen in Kirby's Dream Land? I don't know. It's cool. Don't think, feel. I was like, yeah, heck yeah, Sakurai.
We should let more 19-year... No, that's not true. We should let more people, 19-year-olds, but like 90s 19-year-olds, make their own silly little games. I actually
like, why does Kirby split into 3 at the end of each level? I don't know. Why does Kirby do this? I don't know. You know? Feels good. Feels cool.
This man is all about the noble art of making a game. And that's it.
I'm also super fond of, so the way that a lot of sprites work in Kirby, because the game is quite small. Like, yeah. I think he said smaller than any of the images he was showing in his maiden PowerPoint slides.
Well, I saw it's smaller than any, like, pixel in Super Smash Ultimate.
Yeah.
Like,
so a lot of sprites
I think it's measured in kilobytes. Is that right? KB.
Yes. Yeah. But a lot of them are split in, like, halves or quarters or whatever, so that they can just, like, flip and mirror to give, like, the impression of movement.
Yeah.
And differences. But I'm really fond of Kirby's falling sprite, which just has him, like, absolutely face first plummeting down to the ground.
Good.
Like, just, like, arms trailing behind him, just face first, ready to smash into whatever he's gonna land on.
I think we've all been there.
And, like, there's, like, a tree boss where he showed, like a quarter of an oval and was like, what's this? This is the tree boss. Because he just takes the quarter of an oval, like, flips it both ways, and then puts it against the tree in the background. So there's 2 for the eyes and 1 for the mouth. That's all just a quarter of an oval, which, like, game development's wild, man.
I wanted to dissect Sakurai's brain.
I mean, I'm sure these were things that a lot of games were doing, right? To save on size.
Here's the thing. Here's what's crazy. It's crazy that he knew how to do that, right? He was like, I know how to, like I have this trick that he has to have learned from someone, right? No one's brain can be like, the way I'm going to make this boss is by taking a half an oval and putting it everywhere. Somebody has to have told him that. Yeah. Or, like, told him something that sparked that. Well, at the same time, no one was like, have you considered a keyboard?
It seemed like this was the way for him. He found it very helpful. He did say, like, at the time, a lot of developers would, like, use graph paper to sort of fit all of the sprites in, like, a box, right? But he just did it right on the thing. But yeah, like, he showed, like, there's, like, this square that's like, okay, here's all the Kirby ones, here's all the ones that are consistent across the game, and then here's the space for whatever is unique to this level that has to be put in. But it's very tiny, and yet it's still a very charismatic looking, charming looking game, right?
Yeah, you don't need a lot.
Yeah, you don't need a lot.
If you've got a round, spry little boy, it's really all you need.
Well, shall we continue sucking and move on to V Rising? They both suck, right?
You're right. Sorry. I was like, what are you talking about?
The
Emma?
Characters?
Yes, I get it. I was like, wow, Emma is not feeling great about how this podcast is going, or really hates Kirby. One of the two. Yes, It's V Rising time. V Rising. A vampire action RPG survival game from Stunlock Studios, published by Level Infinite. Came into early access on PC in 2022, and they just released it earlier this year in like May and June for PC and PS5.
Yes, the 1.0 release.
Yes.
Which, like, what is early access anymore?
It's a good question.
It's still a living game, right? They are pushing updates. They just released on their dev blog, which always delights me when I find a developer that keeps an active dev blog.
Yes,
honestly.
they do.
But they just posted a couple days ago, like, here's our 1.1 sort of preview, right?
The classic Emma manifestation, by the way.
I know. Like, what is it? What is the difference between, I guess it's just like, okay, like, this is like a complete experience that works properly. That's what 1.0 is. And then they continue adding content past that.
I mean, I think early access now is mostly just a cuter way of being like, this is live service, except like not live service like Fortnite. But
then when do you say, oh, this is 1.0 now, right? Because they're not in early access.
You say
anymore.
It's 1.0 when you feel like you have enough content that you can charge more money.
Did they raise the price? They raise the price?
Yeah.
They did? Okay.
Yeah, they like doubled it.
Okay. I mean, I know that a lot of early access is for, like, outsourcing your QA and playtesting on a bigger scale for complicated games, right?
Yeah.
Which, like, I get that. But it is interesting to be like, okay, you know, we're out of early access now. Anyway, the next update is coming, you know? You know what I mean?
It's just like a reflection of, like, the industry, though, right? I mean, the updates have to come.
I guess so. I mean, there are games that have come out of early, like, you know, Hades was in early access. They didn't push more content after 1.0. I don't know if they did any patches or anything, but they didn't, like, add expansions or anything.
You're right, but that question there, though, is, like, would they have, had they not realized what they had on their hands? Does that make sense?
Well,
like, Hades I don't think
super
any DLC possibilities.
Yes, and also, I just don't know if that's, I mean, maybe they will. Maybe it'll be something that they'd like to try now that they're doing a sequel, but I don't think that's really what Supergiant is interested in doing.
No, totally. But it is, I do feel like the sequel coming does put a different context on none of that happening in that case.
Right.
Because it's like, okay, like, I do wonder about, like, the kind of, like, timeline process of that, right? Like, I'm talking about an entirely different game, and I will come back to V Rising, but it's like, where was the genesis for Hades 2, right? And, like, what parts of work happened at what stage? Were they considering DLC, and then when everybody loved this game and it made a lot of money, they were like, actually, let's do a sequel? Or did they not consider the sequel until it made a lot of money? Or
was already making a lot of money before the 1.0 release, so
sure, but I do feel like when Hades, like, came, I mean, like, you know, was the Game of the Year indie that year.
Well, yeah.
Anyway. But yes, early access, it's a little silly.
I mean, there's even, like, visual novels that are in early access, right? Because they're not done yet, right? And the 1.0 release will be like, okay, they're done now.
That's so interesting.
Which, again, I don't think they'll have DLC for that. But this is V Rising is very much like a, you know, there's servers, right? You see other players on it. They want you to continue coming back to it, right? It's a living game. And so what exactly does 1.0 mean, in that context for that sort of game.
We should really do an early access side quest. Have we done that already? It feels like that. There's
I have no idea. I've never done it.
But yeah, no, it is. It's interesting, and it does feel like it's more of a marketing gimmick than anything else, or like a way to release something. Although it's super interesting though, because people like reviewed this game, right? Like you would think that one way that early access benefits you is saying, well, I'm going to get this out there and I'm going to make some money, but like I'm basically saying to the critics, like, you can't review this.
Well, you can review this. It's just
you
have to review it as an early access product, right? They're telling you when you get access to it, like, well, it's not done yet, right?
Right.
It's just a matter of, well, even 1.0 is kind of like, well, it's not done yet.
Right.
Which is kind of the nature of these sorts of games, of course.
I guess it does give you, because there are plenty of outlets that are like, I reviewed this in 2022 and now I'm reviewing it again in 2024.
Yes.
And getting that second press hit is not nothing.
Yes, that's true.
Anyway, I should talk about the game. So in V Rising, you're a vampire. Vampires are back in. Have you noticed that?
There's even vampires in Vampire Survivor now.
What? Oh,
there are vampires in Vampire Survivors.
No, are there really?
Because they have Castlevania DLC.
Okay, but like that's sort of fake.
It's not fake. There's vampires in it now. They can't take that back.
That's a betrayal. That's wrong. I'm sorry. That's wrong.
Are vampires back in? Give me your supporting evidence.
Come on.
Just like as per your time loop ones.
Vampire the Masquerade. I feel like there's a lot of vampire games. I know there's no vampires in Vampire Survivors.
There are
now. What We Do in the Shadows. I didn't do a lot of research into the actual prevalence of vampire media, but I'm sorry. I
get, Interview with a Vampire, the TV show, is quite in. So sure. I'll give you that. Too.
Thank you. My point being that I feel like we've overcome I think vampires are a bit like frozen yogurt.
Yeah.
Before I explain that, do you understand what I mean? Do I need to explain it to you?
It comes in and out of fashion.
That's correct. So I do feel like we made it out of the kind of in much the same way as Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson have reached new heights in their careers. Like we've sort of made it out of the post-Twilight vampire hangover into a new era of vamps.
All right. So
maybe I'm just feeling like that because it was just Halloween, though. I'm like, man, vampires are kind of everywhere right now, aren't they?
I guess, yeah, you're right. They are.
Like, kind of all
so
over the place.
So many people dressed up as vampires. It was crazy. Anyway, V Rising is a survival game. And, like, an action game.
Yep.
And by survival game, what it is, essentially, is you gather a lot of stuff. You use that stuff to craft things, such as better gear, and so on. You take that gear and go and defeat bosses in like a bounty hunter type way. You're trying to raise your rank among the vampire upper echelon, essentially. So you're just taking out any vampires that are ahead of you, right? And then by doing that, you get access to more materials that you can collect, which you can use to craft better gear, and then you can go and take on the next boss. That's the gameplay loop I got from reading reviews and watching some gameplay and stuff. Where does the blood sucking come into it that I missed?
So you do. So the bosses, right, have fancy blood, V blood, that you drink and it gives you powers.
Okay, so you drink the blood of other vampires when you defeat the bosses.
Yes, when you defeat the bosses, who I did not think were all vampires, but maybe they are. Maybe I missed that, and there's just a diversity of vampire type.
My understanding was, like, you're trying to, like, get up the ranks until you can fight Dracula.
Yes. But I wasn't sure that all of the bosses were also vampires. Anyway, regardless, the bosses have fancy blood, and when you drink that blood, it teaches you new crafting things and new magic.
Okay.
But you also, I believe, have to drink normal human blood just as, like, a survival game mechanic.
Yeah. All right. There's also a day-night cycle, which apparently is somewhat controversial, it felt like, from the reviews I read, of just, like, when it's day, it's just a hassle to do anything.
Here's the thing. Here's what I found really interesting about reading these reviews, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's a resource gatherer, it's a survival game. It also has some combat, like Diablo or Hades or whatever style, kind of top-down combat.
It's very, I watched one that, like, compared it, like, the boss design. It's very much not a Souls-like, the game itself, but the boss design kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
In that there's a whole bunch of them, like over 50 in the 1.0 release. And they all have, like, their own unique mechanics and feel and stuff like that.
Kind of a tunic-like. Just
sure. Yeah.
But it was interesting to me to read all of these reviews of this, like, survival game of people who seemed annoyed when it was a survival game. Like, people were like, all the resource gathering, or all the, like, having to avoid the sunlight, it's, like, the friction of it, it's hard. And it's like, okay, that's fine. But it's, like, feels like you've maybe played a little too much Vampire Survivors. And, like, you're ready for stuff to be just, like, flying all over the place at you, numbers go up. It was just interesting to me how many of the reviews seemed annoyed by something that I would consider to be, like, a fundamental aspect of this type of game. And that's not to say it can't be balanced wrong, but it was interesting.
Apparently, there is some difference that between, like, a PvP and a PvE server.
Yes.
Where you gather materials, more materials faster in PvP servers. And there's some limitations that are lifted in that as well. Because I read the Eurogamer review of 1.0, and they were just talking about, like, in their, like, private PvE server, they were getting very frustrated, and then in their PvP server, they were having a lot of fun. So some of that might be, like, the difference in where people are playing and whether they've found a way to sort of balance that well. But this is a common, because it's hard to get these sorts of survival games right, because a lot of it is just, like, waiting around for stuff to happen. And some people will find that fun, and some people will be like, I want to fight the next boss now, please.
Yeah. You know? No, I mean, and, like, that's fair. Of course that's fair. But also, I don't know. I was like, come on. Like, you can't be annoyed that you have to gather sticks. Sorry.
I mean, you know, it is sort of, it feels a bit like a mashup, right? Yeah. A lot of survival games certainly don't have, like, bosses and combat, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So I think that in doing that, you're shoving two quite different genres on top of each other, and people who don't like survival games are going to naturally find friction with that part of the system.
But the fundamental thesis of this podcast is that that's a good idea, Emma. We can't see out there.
It's a good idea unless, like, it's like 70% of our game ideas, right?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, that was a pretty generous percentage for us, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I'm feeling kind. I'm feeling kind to myself today. So.
Nice.
The Rock Paper Shotgun review for 1.0 also insisted on referring to Dracula as Mr. Dracula the whole time, which I enjoyed.
Deeply respectful.
Yes. Gotta work your way up. They're called V carriers, which is why I assume they were all vampires, because they've got the V in them.
Sure.
Maybe they're, like, demons and stuff too.
But I do want to take that back. I'm not sure it is respectful to refer to Dracula as Mr. Dracula, and do you know why?
Because he's a count. It's actually disrespectful. Yeah. You're right.
At first I was like, oh, respectful, interesting.
And I just like that it makes the reviewer sound like a Victorian child. I don't know.
Yes.
Mr. Dracula.
Somebody at PC Gamer really liked that you could, like, carry full storage crates. They wrote, like, a whole article about, like, I didn't have to, like, take everything out of the crate and move it to a new crate and disassemble the crate. You can also, you build, like, castles, right? You're, like, your little vampire castle, and you can also just teleport that, which is nice.
It does seem to have some troubles as a living game of, like, giving players enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
Although I was watching, like after 100% review where it's like, I've played 500 hours of this. Why won't they give me more to do?
Maybe that's enough.
Maybe you don't need more to do.
Have you considered Kirby's Dream Land?
Maybe you should try a round of Kirby's Dream Land real quick before returning. But that is sort of like, to, like, continue to exist, right? They have to keep players around and bring in new players, right? And that sort of stuff, which is definitely a challenge of current game development.
Yes, the need to continue to sell more games and also have people who already have it feel
Especially
happy.
Since everybody's learned how to look at your player count on Steam, right?
It's insufferable.
I mean, like, that sort of stuff is important to games like this, but unfortunately, because other people can see it, and there hasn't been any, like, oh, their player count is down, whatever, that I saw for this game in particular, but, like, it's a self-fulfilling thing, unfortunately, right? If the player count starts to look a little low, now everybody looks at that and it's like, dead game, and they won't go play it, right? Because they're like, oh, they've only got, like 6,000 concurrent players or something.
Yeah.
It's triple annoying when people look at, like, single player game concurrent players. It's like, that doesn't matter. Shut up. It doesn't matter at all.
Like, stop it.
So what if I bought it and I'm not playing it right now and it's just sitting on my shelf?
Who cares? Don't judge me. Shut up.
But that is why they have to keep making updates even after 1.0, because as a design of the game, it's sort of reliant on their continuing to be people.
Well, people really want to be able to duel.
I think they were saying that's one of the additions to 1.1.
They're doing, like, item fusion, and they're doing, like, various no consequence fight other people stuff. They were like, right now, if you want to test out a build, you kind of have to go out there and do it, and that could be kind of costly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just want to have some fun fighting your friends, now you can build, like, an arena in your castle and do it, which is neat. And I imagine will please the sticking around 501st hour players.
Yeah.
I was intrigued by this game. Probably not enough to get it, but I was a little bit like, there's some Madelyn core elements here, for sure.
Yeah.
Feels like it's a anti-Bogosian type loop.
Is it?
Well, he hates work.
Oh, right. So it's because it's work.
Yeah.
It's against heat.
Yeah.
I don't remember if he wrote about, like, survival games specifically in that article. I do wonder what his take would be. I feel like, what is that? Like, I think they would just simply baffle him, you know?
Yeah.
They kind of baffle me, to be fair.
It seems like, achievement isn't within reach, you know?
Yeah, I guess so. Number go up.
Mm-hmm. What more do you need than that?
Nothing.
Also seems like a game that, like, Dad might get into.
Yeah?
But he doesn't have a PlayStation 5, so he's safe.
Good. That is a good way to protect yourself. Simply don't own it.
Yeah.
Alright, any last thoughts on V-Rising specifically?
It's a game. It's confusing to me how it got it. Like, it was a very successful game, and I couldn't find anything that really put its finger on why.
Yeah, I think they've topped 1 million.
Yeah,
so?
Far more than that now, I think.
Yeah, but yeah, it's selling very well. Though, like, I do think that there's
breakout hits before, but, like,
yeah,
it was. I was really looking for this. I was like, someone please explain to me. Like, usually you can kind of point to, like, well, this is why this game blew up. And I can't figure out what it is about this.
I mean, I think there are a lot of games that sell quite well and don't seem to have the matching, like, cultural cachet that you would expect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And games that don't sell as well but seem to have a strangely large amount of cultural cachet.
Yeah.
So I don't think those are quite as tied as you would necessarily expect it to be. And not just games, like movies too. Like Avatar is always like the example that people
no cultural cachet.
Pull. It was like strangely no cultural cachet, even though it's quite a big movie and everybody goes to see it. Which isn't like that again. And having cultural cachet doesn't even necessarily a measure of quality either. They're all separate things.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. Well, mashup.
The Monster Mash.
The Monster Mash.
Kirby as a monster. No, he's
God.
He's a spry little boy.
He's a spry little boy who's also a god.
You're right.
Yeah, definitely something with like eating.
Yeah, there definitely has to be eating, no doubt. A castle has to fly at some point.
Maybe you're like an eldritch being, and you have like a constantly sort of growing hunger, right?
Okay.
That you have to satiate.
Okay.
And to do that, you need to go out and you can either sort of eat normal people or normal things. They don't necessarily have to be people. I don't know. Yeah. You have to eat normal things, and like that helps your hunger a little bit. But then there's also like special things that you can eat that really like bring down your hunger meter. So you go out and attempt to sort of make your way to those things like Hitman style and eat them.
Okay, and let's say you're feeling like stinky and like you need a bath.
Okay.
Is there like a spirit spa that you can go to?
Which one of these games has the spirit spa?
Nothing. This just gave me big like No Face Spirited Away.
Oh, I see. It is kind of like that, yeah.
Like No Face Simulator.
Yeah. I feel like there's something. I got something there.
I agree. I was trying to figure out, like, can I do something with a vacuum cleaner? So yours is much better than mine.
It does kind of... I feel like the idea of something with a vacuum cleaner... Like, mine does kind of lose the iconic cuteness of Kirby.
Sure.
Which I would argue is, like, a big part of its identity as a game series, right? Yeah. Is, like, this sort of surgically... targeted cuteness.
I feel like a Roomba game could work.
Yeah.
Called Life Sucks or something like that.
Yeah. Sure, yeah, just call it Life Sucks.
I have to
but in like big fluffy letters.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
I do think that's like a game that would be on like the Wholesome Games Direct.
You're right.
Life Sucks.
I'd be like, this game, how would I write this headline? I'm not like has SEO pilled here. I have to come up with a good, this game takes advantage of our parasocial relationship with our Roombas. That would be like the...
Yeah, you're like a Roomba whose owner has been... you know, sort of overwhelmed by despair and their room's a mess. And you have to go sort of clean it up, right? And maybe there's like big areas that are kind of like the bosses, right? That you have to defeat. Really pull in like the Power Wash Simulator appeal, right? With like maybe a little bit of like unpacking in there, right?
This is a good game idea, but I'm actually, it's mine, so I take ownership of this. I'm not sure it has taken anything from V Rising.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's like parts of the house, like there's bosses that you have to defeat as the Roomba.
Bosses in Kirby too,
though. Maybe you have like your Roomba base as well.
Sure.
That you can decorate.
Okay.
And you can upgrade. You can upgrade your Roomba.
Okay. And like you have to manage battery or something. Make sure you clean out the filter. Got it.
Yeah, you have to take care of yourself while also taking care of the people that you love. Wow. That's how they would close the Wholesome Games segment on it.
Nicely done. I feel like those are promising. I feel like those are both the Eldritch Simulator and the Roomba Simulator feel good.
Yeah. both possible games.
Certainly games that are possible.
Games that could be made and wouldn't be the weirdest game you've ever heard of, which is pretty good for us.
You don't have to tell me.
We're in that 30% strike zone right now.
Exactly. Hey, 30% batting average? Pretty good baseball.
Is it?
Pretty sure it is.
I guess so.
I'm pretty sure.
I guess so.
Well, nice. We did it. Thanks, folks, for tuning into another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Can you back me up that vampires are back in again? Every time I say anything to Emma, she's like, what's the evidence for that?
Just when you say there's a trend, I'm like, Madelyn, give me the evidence.
The evidence is vibes. The evidence is that I have the vibe that vampires are cool. Okay. What more do you need? What more do you need than that? Right.
What else do I need?
But if you think vampires are cool again, if you feel like maybe Kirby should have been a different color and you've got a strong idea for it, if you are reevaluating the things that you spent your time on when you were age 19, or if you have thoughts on anything else we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook. I think Emma did delete our Twitter. So we're on it's Blue Sky, right? It's not Bisky.
Yes, it's Blue Sky, but feel free to call it Bisky.
Great. We're on Blue Sky Bisky. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. But most importantly, if you enjoyed the show, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Like, subscribe, etc. to Talk This.
Yeah.
It's Emma's side quest next week.
I don't know.
So,
what's there to talk about right now? I'll think about it.
Regime change in games.
Yeah.
No, so stay tuned for next week, but in 2 weeks, what's coming out of the hat?
In 2 weeks, for our old game, we'll be talking about Prototype.
Mm-hmm.
And for our new game, we'll be talking about mouthwashing.
Mouthwashing?
Yes.
Is that just like a dental hygiene PSA?
Yes. No. No, it is not a dental hygiene PSA.
I can't wait for the joke that I'm going to make about that. That's going to be really good.
Okay. I'll be waiting.
I'll be like, I'll just gargle the... Oh, I shouldn't have said that out loud. Shoot, that would have been really good opening.
Please don't.
Cut
Actually,
Cut
don't do it.
Emma.
Don't do it.
I can't gargle without anything actually in my mouth. Anyway, that's our show.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Emma, sign us off.
This week, I sure hope that you show Mr. Dracula who's boss.